In a rapidly shifting society, now more than ever, it is essential to stay grounded. Balance is key, but harmony is better. Here, we provide the keys to tap into the divine masculine without sacrificing the divine feminine, because confusion not transmuted becomes confusion transferred.
This is Divine Masculine Activated, a weekly Tuesday evening tap-in brought to you by Mastermind Connect and curated by the good brothers J.D. Weatherspoon and Courtney Grange. We invite you to grab your activation method of choice, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and bring your whole self into this space.
And we is live.
Yeah. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, to another season of Divine Masculine Activated. I am Courtney Grange.
And I am your favorite rapper's favorite trapper. You can catch me pulling up in a blueberry Subaru Legacy on the way to consume whatever foods and other snacks that you have in your kitchen. I'll make sure that I perform some sort of active service first before partaking in such luxuries. Greetings, Earthlings. JD here.
Out here speaking everybody's love language, as always.
You know the vibes.
Oh, man, but it is good to be back with y'all, man. It has been some months. And some things have happened for all of us.
Yo, we are pregnant with purpose.
In more ways than one. We gonna get to that later.
Yeah.
On this, Divine Masculine Activated, I'm gonna be talking about AltBlack, this concept that has been swirling around in different circles and different forms for a lot of different reasons. You see it with alternative music and those in the black sphere that embrace it, or goth or Comic-Con or different things like that. But in today's episode, we are going to talk about all things AltBlack. What it is, what it ain't, and what it could be. Basically consider this our Wakanda episode. That's what we here for. All right, so let's kick it off. JD, where we going first?
We are going to that initial audience engagement. We say, hey, I know it's been a long time, so, some house cleaning. Find us, follow us, IG, Divine Masculine Activated. YouTube, it is Mastermind Connect / Divine Masculine Activated. Hit that subscribe, boop, or the boop. Sorry, reversed. And make sure that, not only do it before somebody that you love or somebody that you don't like, and then they can study all of our, musings and turn into somebody that you love, because they'll be a better person. Blackness is not a monolith. Monolith, yeah. What does that mean? So, to break it down so it remains forever, bro, a monolith is a singular point of view. Mm-hmm. In this case, often, especially in the United States, because that's the perspective that we speak from for the most part, we combine everyone considered to be anything, in this case black, into one homogenous group. And that's just simply not the reality.
We different. And we different because we've been different. We ain't never been the same.
Exactly.
So when I hear that, it always reminds me of unfortunately but fortunately, Dr. Umar Johnson's Breakfast Club. I hate to start this off this way.
Wow, you went full Hotep, bro.
I have no affiliations, connections, or continents with the Hotepedness that is Dr. Umar Johnson. However, this one thing that he said, I do wholeheartedly agree with.
All right.
And he said that African Americans are the only cultural group that cannot be deported, meaning there's no place to send us.
No.
Every other cultural group in this country got a home country to go back to. And so that is what makes us the most dangerous underrepresented group in the country, is because we ain't going nowhere and you can't make us go nowhere.
Send me back to North Carolina.
Yes. You gonna send me? You gonna send me back to Newburyport, Massachusetts? Like, come on
Right.
now. But that in this context is where, for me, Black not being a monolith kind of starts, because it's like, yes, if you're an African American, that's true. But like, I'm first generation Jamaican American, there's definitely some place you could send me back to, and I would love to go back to Jamaica, mind you, based on the heritage, my lineage, like my father being born in Jamaica. In other countries, that's a rule, right? Wherever your father or your parent is from, that is where you are considered from until you become like a full-fledged citizen, which has its own parameters. So like, yeah, Black ain't no monolith.
That was a lot. Okay, so starting with the breaking of monolithical compartments, love, thing that everybody loves to talk about, or really everybody loves to talk about, even if they don't like it, right? Like salty people love to talk about love because they think it's whack. Mushy people love to talk about love because they like to feel warm and mushy. It's like an episode of Bridgerton. But anyway, Black love is not just what we see on IG, which for me feels like it goes without saying, but never negate the obvious. All right, I'm gonna start with questions. You can tell I'm super excited to discuss this. Not tired of this debate at all. My brother Odulana,
Yes, sir.
someone who grew up with essentially a mom and two dads, but also got to juxtapose that with your own faith practice, right?
Right.
How do those blend into how you view, practice, and receive love romantically?
Yeah, we starting off heavy. I see how you're doing this. All right. Well, it is a mixed bag. I can say that at the very foundation of it all, because my father being Jamaican, like fully Jamaican, all of my father's
Yes, he
side,
is. Yeah.
like we straight from yard, right? Like that is what it is. My mother's side being for the most part Black African American, and then my stepfather's side being the same, Black African American. I've seen a lot of different relationship dynamics from a cultural perspective, right?
Yeah.
My grandmother on my mother's side is from the South, and so she operates till this day as a Southern grandma in a lot of sense. My grandfather is from Jersey, but his folks from North Carolina, so he's like a country preacher that moved to the city.
Okay.
My stepfather's family from Philly, so that's a whole microcosm of. So all of these different components of like different types of Blackness really shaped what I saw in terms of relationships. And it was a lot, man. I still don't know if I fully grasp it all, because I'm still in my journey of understanding like romantic love and what that looks like for like extended periods of time, meaning like being in a relationship, like really being with somebody or somebody's, whatever, the sexual preference is. But like taking that to a place where it's like, okay, this is the new foundation. I can say that I often find myself struggling to figure out like which point of me is the point that creates family, right? Is it this Caribbean, like more traditional gender role aspects of things where like I do see the benefit of, just doing the things that come more natural to us and allowing that to be what then grows the family perspective. And then there's other pieces in there in terms of like how men and women treat each other in Caribbean households. And just a lot of times you got to explain to African Americans, and it can be challenging. Like as a Black man, for me to say like, oh, you're not gonna make my plate could be offensive. But I come from a household where like the men do most of the cooking and the women do most of the serving because the men did the cooking. So it had nothing to do.
Not to mention they also had to chop up the goat before they cooked it. So there was that too.
I mean, so it had nothing to do with patriarchy. It had everything to do with just like, this is the help piece of things. We do this together. Yeah. This your thing. This my function. Thing. In addition to the way that we can often speak to each other in Caribbean households, it's much more curt. Like we joke in a manner that if you got soft skin, that joint really might hurt your feelings.
It's so entertaining though, because if you don't, like, let you just finish working out and you happen to walk into the house and you smell like you just work out. What's the you been from morning?
Yo, so there's just a different component to that with me. And like some parts of me are very Caribbean, some parts of me are very Black. And then there's my own entrance from my spirituality, being Isheshe, being Yoruba, that is a totally different construct with all of that. And so honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out, man. Romantic love for me is very much a paradox. Like it's not a problem I look to solve. It's just this thing that I always look to balance and find harmony with in terms of like, listen, I ain't one thing. I don't expect anybody else to be one thing, but I do appreciate when someone else accepts me for who I am and I accept them for who they are. And then we kind of learn what to do with that over time. So that's my side of the house. Now, I know for you, situation is a little different. And I'm a flip script real quick and keep it on the love topic because one of the things that I know about you as a South Florida boy, but also a global citizen, is that you've gotten to experience romance and partnership on a global scale, right? In different countries and literally see how it works in those spaces. What's been the most challenging component for you living here, but having such a broad global perspective on like love and relationships as a Black man?
Oh man, that's a whole episode. It's interesting because like off top, the roots are like like being of Geechee descent, you always feel like you're the original like immigrants of the entire Eastern Seaboard. This is like we always been around like influencing things, but never really being on Front Street till you get to like the extreme cases like the Frank Lucases, right, and Nicky Barnes of the world. But for the most part, we just kind of always been around, just like we're very much like the gypsies and Peaky Blinders. When you do the math on that, this is dead ass. It's what it was, right? And so like having that as the foundation and being like very much traditionally Southern in terms of how my family is, but within the context of me being like second generation born in Florida, third generation in South Florida, in this town specifically, right? So being the oddball who was always doing the stuff that the rest of the diaspora were doing that like Black Americans just typically didn't rock with because no, like there's a very narrow lane. I always typically felt a part of myself being more at home around like in a very Latin Caribbean space. Just by default, but then also having like it wasn't a dual consciousness because I was also like scouting and around rednecks, right? So like I had friends that dead ass took a diesel engine from a 1975 Silverado, attached it to a skiff and made an airboat, and would go alligator hunting with it. But
it probably works till this day.
100%. First and foremost, the diesel engine had 275,000 miles on it before they took it out. The truck rusted away and fell apart, but the engine was good, so they found something else to do with it. This was 13 years ago, easily. But yeah, fool. So it was like that plus like the Afro Latin Carib piece, and then having like the very, very down home experience of like hurricanes come, lights go out. We use the kerosene lamps around my house across the street that still had a working rotary phone, and she's singing hymns in the morning, making biscuits from scratch. So off top, it's like, how are we gonna make this work out? And so like traveling allowed me to. It's funny now. I'm thinking of you remember that Andre 3000 joint called A Day in the Life of Benjamin Andre. It's like changing my style became relief for the primitive beast. And so I got a chance to stretch my legs in all the directions because the norms that we have here, like every place has their norms, but norm is subjective. Like what's normal to you will 1,000 miles away is completely different from me. So it was a lot of breath of fresh air because everything that typically I saw as a limiting factor didn't really exist there. And so I know for me, like the biggest thing was going to like Western Europe and experiencing what romantic interaction was like there because number one, I'm Black, but number two, I'm from the United States. So automatically I go from being down here to being up here. And like the reality of having like a German lady walk up and being like, all right, cool, here's a drink, let's have a conversation. But
it literally like that's a for all y'all that may not understand, that is the equivalent of a DM slide in Germany.
Yeah, like she just walks up like, hi.
You go pull up. Yeah.
Right. But then also like the race dynamic isn't much of a factor. The socioeconomic one in certain parts of the world, not as much, but in other parts of the world, even more so. Like way more than race. Like I don't really care what you look like. What do you have and what can you do for me? And so that allowed me to directly challenge the lens that I learned to see the world through, and the parts that no longer serve me. All right, cool. I can let it go. I don't have to think about this again until I get back home and I listen to my family say stuff, and it's like, wow, you have no idea that none of this is actually necessary. While alternatively being like, oh, this is a really good principle. Like, I understand why mutual work ethic is important. I understand why the village construct makes for really stable people. So now it's taking all of the expansive topics like gender roles aren't really necessary unless they are for you, but making sure that there is that clearly defined role. And so now where we bridge with the Asheshe piece is actually help me create a system to where all of this can fit. Because I think that's the beauty of African spiritual science. Like the eggs are already in everybody's basket. How do you want that to look like? There's no right or wrong answer. Just pick that and then just be consistent with it. And as you continue to make that decision, everything just sort of forms around it. And then it's picking a teammate for whom that same system and arrangement works. And then continue to co-collaborate to make it flourish, which takes me back to like how my grandparents intended to function. They just didn't have the space to explore who they were first. Like everything was based on subsistence. You know what I mean? Like my grandfather was a sharecropper. So was my grandma. They had like double-digit children. They didn't really have time to do a lot of introspection.
That's right. Yeah. The work took precedence. Yeah.
It was all work. Like, whereas for me, there's the foundation of the work, but for what? Like I don't have 12 kids to feed.
Yeah.
I don't need to be up getting things ready at 4:30 in the morning, but I'm also up at 4:30 in the morning because something in me genetically just feels like I need to be productive already. How do I want to vicinity?
That's that in a lot of ways. It's funny you say that because for me, that is the foundation of AltBlack, right?
Yeah.
Or I would say more so what allows our generation to kind of spearhead AltBlackness in the sense of we don't have to spend all of our time working. We saw our parents' generation do that, and we're thankful for it. We actually pay tons of homage to it. But there's all this stuff going on in here and in here that matters too. And the world over, you see a lot more people getting into that and not being so focused on the work, because I know from my perspective, like this country has always been, from my father's side of the family, like it's where you come to go make the money.
Yeah,
right?
It's for most immigrants, America is an ATM.
That's it.
We in the casino. Go to the crap table, roll them dice, grab them chips. I'm gone.
Bounce, right? And really embracing that concept of like, if I'm going to be here, I'm here to make money. I'm not here to really be a full participant in this structure of like organized people living here, politics, and all that other stuff, because it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And I think that's where a part of AltBlackness for our generation like really started to send so many people abroad. Like this travel culture that we've seen really boom, us getting involved in things like Burning Man, the Afrobeat takeover, and now
Afro Nation is, I'm so hurt.
Yo,
like y'all want to be in Portugal this year? Like this year?
It's beautiful to see. And it's beautiful to see
I'm salty because I can't go. That's it. I'm just
So like minus the prestige of like these beautiful Instagram pictures and people traveling all these places, and like just doing it for the sheer popularity of it, there's also the cultural exchanges that happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if you're going to Tulum, if you're going to Belize, if you're going to Indonesia, like, you're going to interact with a completely different culture than you were used to. I don't
Even if
care
you
how
don't look
luxurious your trip is. That first round through an airport in a foreign country,
it gets very real very quick. And
quickly.
before you land, it's like you can tell how it's gonna go based on how they give you the customs information.
Yeah.
Because depending on where you at, you will not get the customs information before the plane lands. It's like punctuality, not a thing here. Understand?
Not a thing.
We're gonna be in line for 2.5
operates completely
hours.
differently, right? Time operates completely differently in certain places, and just that alone, in terms of how you start to see it interact, right? I remember my first trips to Nigeria, and being in an environment where there's like all these adults, all these young people, and all these children, like 6, 5, 4 years old, and they're all in this, compound, so to speak. And I'm noticing that, all right, the adults are working, they're doing their thing. The young people are doing their thing. And these children, they're really just by themselves. Like, nobody's watching the kids. Nobody's making sure that the kids aren't doing crazy stuff. At the same time, none of the kids are doing crazy stuff. Like, they're just organized in their childhood in this sphere, and everyone's good. Now, if somebody hops out of line, you might see any of these adults or these young people check one of the kids or take care of them, etc. And you might never really know whose parents these children belong, like who goes with who.
It's irrelevant.
Relationship dynamics mean nothing. Everyone is mother. Everyone is father. Everyone is auntie. Everyone is uncle. Everyone is brother. Everyone is sister. Everyone. And to see that happen amongst Blackness, right? And then come back to this country, it's like, oh yeah, Black definitely ain't no damn monolith.
That's what's so like. So this is the funny thing that I always, I still marvel at it. Now I have more like perspective on why that is, but like coming up with very much, because you've been around the way, like even as gentrified and different as it is now, like you can extrapolate so 20 years ago was probably like this. And so having a very similar dynamic of, well, bro, like 40 to 60% of the houses on my block were either directly owned by family or owned by someone who has been tight with the family for like 30 plus years. So like I very much had the existence of, I could get a beating from anybody, I could get yelled at from anybody. But alternatively, like if my parents got to go do something, all right, cool, just make sure he gets home good. I'll stop saying.
Yep.
But that extended to the schoolhouse. Like I couldn't even really show out at school, even down to the fact where like I think that created a lot of odd synchronicities with a lot of my West Indian friends. And as you find out that like traditional Southern culture and traditional West Indian culture are like dumb parallel.
But not that much different.
Not that it's like they're just different enough to where if you try to like put them on top of each other, you'll catch static and you play yourself.
Yep.
You can't completely differentiate them either because there are a lot of very uncanny similarities. And so you realize that like the problem, so to speak, is America. And then you do the math and you find out, well, it's kind of everybody's thing, right? Like within 2 to 3 generations, I don't care how progressive, how interconnected, how even keeled the culture you came from is. Within 2 to 3 generations, depression rates, substance abuse, divorce, all of that's just gonna go up.
All of it, yeah.
It comes with the territory, unless you already have a like mechanism in place that's going to divert that.
Yeah, which actually is a beautiful pivot into our next topic of conversation around AltBlackness. When we start talking about money, finances, wealth, and how that connects to the AltBlack experience. So now we are moving into a conversation around the currency of movement, the pursuit of opportunity. And so I started off like to take it back to something you just said about 40 to 60% of the houses on your block were either made by or owned by people in your family or close to your family. We now see, especially in the social media verse, right, this boom of like financial literacy around home ownership, around investing, and all these different components that from a purely African American lens are super important because we have either been held out from participating in these aspects of wealth generation,
Yep.
or when given the opportunity, we didn't have the intellectual space or the knowledge of what
To
it takes
really flip that. Yeah.
to really go into it. Now you take that and you put it in the lens of like someone who's from the South or someone who's from the Caribbean or someone who's first generation.
It's
That's
foreign.
still Black.
It's
Completely
foreign.
foreign. Like,
It's foreign that
yo,
it's new. It's like, yo, what you mean you don't own a house? Like, what?
first of all, what you mean you don't build your own house?
Thank you.
Like,
What do you
from
mean you don't know
scratch?
how to change a car tire? Let's start there.
Come on, man. Like, you ain't never ripped open a toilet, took it off, and looked at what was going. Like, these small things of just natural life for a lot of Black
Right.
people that come from certain perspectives
Yeah.
aren't the monolith for Blackness when it comes to what's intriguing, what's interesting, and what we look at as like how we go about building wealth.
Mhm.
And so I see a lot of folks nowadays from that alt-Black perspective again, like completely doing away with that concept. Like, I personally subscribe to the understanding if you own a home and that home doesn't make you any money, it's not an asset yet. I don't care what you say.
No.
If you have a home that either the valuation of that home isn't more than what you paid for it, or you're not making money off of the home, you just living in it and paying your mortgage, that's not an asset. It's still a liability.
It's
And
a
it's funny
convertible
because
asset, but it ain't fully potential yet. It still has.
I mean, it might not even be convertible if you underwater, depending, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, but
it
now
could
we
be
get into
different.
like how the ingenuity level and how sick is your know-how of basic contracting work, or how good are you at being an autodidact and just going to YouTube University and figuring
Figure
it
that
out?
thing out. Yep. Yeah. So I think in that space for you, like, how do you view that now, right? Because you've gotten a chance to travel,
Mhm.
to live and lay roots in other areas, and now you back in kind of the cradle, so to speak,
Right.
doing the thing the way that it was done before you. You see what I'm saying? So in a sense, like, you've really Sankofa in an
Oh,
interesting
fully
way.
percent. Yeah, nah. It's a very prodigal son returning home situation. Like the only thing missing was like the slaughtering of the calf in the
So
sounding of
welcome you back in.
right. That is dope because it feels very retro future, right? It's like, all right, this is what we've always done, but it's a different perspective. So like for me, I've always looked at it as all of his story is a story, right? And so like every different culture, every different facet, like they got their own 16 bars that they contributed to this We Are the World song. And so it's like borrowing those tips, like, all right, well, how do I use this like a casino, but create a way to where I don't have to leave, but also creating contingencies to where if we do gotta bounce, those avenues are open, right? And so it's we're no longer it's not just about, because historically for my family it was always find ways to create homesteads and networks and communities and insulate, so then the resistance from outside doesn't invade, right?
That's right.
It doesn't break the family up. That's why like a lot of the resilience comes from just like years and years and years of resistance, right? Strong winds make for strong roots. Whereas with this, it's using that same tenacity towards being insular and resisting the change of the outside to, all right, you can't really score points on offense. How do I move like a Nigerian in DC?
Just such a specific.
Like, what do I want? I'm only looking for what I want. If I don't want it, I'm not paying attention to it. But I'm gonna go find it and I'm gonna utilize it to like, all right, boom. Or like Jews in Boca Raton. Like, and just playing that, like you can look for the optimal situations to fit those into the safety space. And then you can use the resources because there are tons of resources out here. There's so much. You don't have to fight everything. You don't have to be suspicious of everything because that's a fear-based response. And fear contracts. You can't expand in that space. You're not operating from your frontal cortex. That's your brain. It's fight or flight. And you don't need to fight or flight everything.
So let's take this back into the masculine and feminine polarity aspect of things, right? So when we talk about alt-black and it being this space where the access to information literally, I would say 100x from one generation to the next,
Easily.
right? From the baby boomer to the millennial, access to information truly just like, right? Thank you, internet. Thank you, all of these technology things that have advanced us. But then we bring it back to the dynamics that we always like to ground ourselves in this podcast or this web series. Is masculine and feminine energy, right? And so when we think of technology and its advancements,
Right.
it is in a sense masculine, right? Would we consider it
Technology is
masculine?
inherently masculine. Yeah, 100%.
And then the freedom that it provides, feminine. So to bring it back home for y'all that did not watch last season, when we look at masculine and feminine energy from a perspective of how they work well together, masculinity is like the container, right? It creates the safe space, it creates the trusted environment for femininity to freely grow and blossom out of, right? It's a symbiotic relationship because if you don't have the safety, you really don't have the opportunity to rest and be peaceful enough to truly conceptualize what freedom could look like for you or what radical love or just being able to move the way you want could look like. On the other side of that, if the container is not producing that freedom, the container becomes pointless.
Yeah.
And so masculinity in a sense is has to be driven towards something. Femininity in a sense has to be safe in order to grow out of it. That's just our perspective. If you like it, keep it. If not, send it back to somebody else because that's what this podcast is about.
That's why we have windows.
That's it. So with that, I would love to invite the audience in real quick, right? So we've been talking about this alt-black thing and giving it a name and breath and life. And we would love to hear from y'all. So if you have examples or experiences of what alt-black means to you, hit us up. Head over to Instagram, Divine Masculine Activated, and let us see your examples of alt-blackness. You could tag us. You could just use the hashtag alt-black. You can use the hashtag DMA. We're going to be here consistently talking about this season. So we would love to see your examples of alt-blackness. And now, for our next act, in the alt-black sphere, the concept of achieving the American dream, now what? Right, JD?
I'm coming into you. It's your turn to bust this one. So, all right, you've laid the story for it, right? Like, foreign-born parents, parent came here, tapped in with the local, when a man loves a woman, so on and so forth. The moon was right, everything aligned, you're here. You carry that legacy forward and applied it in your own way. You did the college, you did the corporate shuffle, still doing it, but found a way to tweak it for yourself. Done the marriage, done the divorce, got the kid, figured out how to nail co-parenting in a way that I'm still taking notes on. And now, in many regards, you've achieved the American dream, so to speak. Now what?
What now? So for me, it's now that component of now that I guess you could say am in a space where I'm not working to achieve certain things financially from a perspective of grounding. Now it's growth mode. We all money in and we green and we moving forward.
Yeah.
I would say now it's let's go achieve some other dreams. And for me, that is largely family. It's that piece right there where it's if all else were to fall away today, what would I cling to? I would cling to my family.
Yeah, I definitely see that playing out with you. And that's a lot of conversations that we've had offline sidebar. I know for you, ironically enough, as you progress through all these levels, it seems like consistently the biggest bag for you is children.
Yeah.
Specific. Now I say the irony in that because I don't necessarily know that you're also intentionally trying to make more kids per se. By the way, fully understandable.
Yes.
The way this is set up. I get it. So how do you what's the word I'm looking for? Like, how do you rectify both of those paradigms at the same time?
I mean, it kind of goes back to what you said earlier about Isheshe providing the structure. Like
Okay.
now, I don't feel as if I have to figure it out because I know what my life path is. Right, I know what my purpose is from a perspective of here's what's waiting for you when your character starts to reflect enough
Yeah.
of the things you want to receive.
You backed up
And
old
so
news to Iwa Pele, but
that's it, right? It's the
yeah.
Iwa Pwele of the thing, right? And for those that aren't familiar, Iwa Pwele is a Nigerian or Yoruba phrase that really just means of good character. And so I think a lot of things for me come from that formula of what does my character need to look like in order for me to have access to the thing that I say that I want. And that's constantly like an interesting life's journey because there's what I think good character is, there's
Mm.
what I feel and what I process, but then there's what actually gets me the thing that I said that I wanted. And that is always interesting to see how it unfolds, especially when we talk about children. And so, kind of back to that wealth conversation that we were saying around alt-blackness, in the Isheshe tradition, we really only pray for three things. We pray for longevity, long life. We pray for
Mm.
health in our relationship lives, and we pray for the blessings of children to always be around us. Now, that can stem into a whole bunch of different things when you think
Mm.
about it. But really, those are the three pillars of wealth. If you have long life, you will have enough time to acquire whatever you consider wealth to be. If you have healthy relationships, we all know how that goes. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It ain't your net worth, it's your network. Your relationships are truly what allow you to make the wealth happen. But
Good
then
friend better than pocket money.
you know what I'm talking about?
All
But
day.
then this is also where like more traditional or foreign cultures have such a heavy emphasis on family. Children are really a pillar of your worth, of your wealth, because you don't just have children willy-nilly like that, right? Like you don't have a whole bunch of babies being born out of wedlock in certain places or born out of familial constructs in certain
There we go.
places like you do other places. Again, blackness ain't no monolith in that conversation. So for those that come from cultures where they embrace the understanding that in order for you to have children, you have to be able to provide for those children. Period. So if I got 20 kids, you see what that looks like. Because if I can provide for 20, boom, that's wealth in itself. And so that's the part that now sticks in the front of my mind right here is I understand now what it takes to be on a path of trying to build the right environment for one child and how much that takes energetically. If I'm gonna
Do
do
I
it
really
again
want 5?
and again, like, come on, man, this ain't a thing where it's a selfish choice no more. I think a lot of times we come from a background where children are emotional decisions. I love you. We're in love. Let's start a family.
Or just
Uh,
completely absent-minded decisions. Like,
in my opinion, and so even
miscalculated the last pump, and here we are. Like,
and now you here, right? Like you was practicing until your ass bust through the packaging. Like you, my favorite accident. Like these are things that we understand in the Black American experience that I think our generation, the generations moving forward, are really looking at differently. And it goes back to that all Black piece of things. Like we see more people getting married or being in partnerships and not focusing on children until way down the line.
or intentionally being like, I know this isn't really a true passion of mine, but
Mhm.
this gives me the bandwidth to support the people in my network who do want that. And then I can just
That's
be
right.
the kick ass auntie uncle, and then I can support. And it's like, yeah, the world needs
Did
more.
that, right? Right on line with that. And even still further, those of us that are like, you know what? I do want children. I do feel that I have something that I can give from a nurturing perspective. But this whole marriage relationship thing, like, I don't know if I really bang with it. So, like, let me just go find a really sound friendship and let's have some children together and just co-parent, which I can tell you from personal experience,
It's awesome.
co-parenting ain't always a hard thing. It's not easy in terms of the work ethic, but like once you find a rhythm with it and you honor the
It
fact
can
that
be way more convenient than having a coach.
yeah,
I can be an
I will
awesome anything for 2 weeks at a time.
listen, I will be very transparent in saying one of my biggest reminders to be patient with having more children is the fact that like this current structure of co-parenting, I won't have again. Right? I won't have 50% of my time fully locked into my child, 50% of my time free. But even in that free time, I know that my child is being fully nurtured by the only other person that I would trust my child with. So my child is 100. His mother and I get these interesting blocks of time to do our things different ways. And I respect that. I respect what it provides for me because I didn't come from a background like that. Most of the family
Likely
members that I
neither
do
did she.
have, it's
That's
all single parents.
unprecedented freedom and support because on her side, she knows even if something happens to you, your network is so solid that there are people who will step in and fill in the
Got
gap
it.
while you
That's
get
right.
yourself sorted out.
Yeah, that small adjustment alone is another 100x on the access to information that I now see possible. Because like every day, somebody reminds me that everybody doesn't have this structure of co-parenting, and I'm thankful for it. I never take this shit for granted. Believe me, because it could be very different.
Man, I watched my brother go through 6 very long years of a custody battle, and
Don't nobody want that.
man.
Nah. So let's lighten this up a little bit, right? And,
Uh-huh.
and take it back to this career life finance balance thing with regards to how we approach like entertainment and what we like to do as alt Black people, right? Moving out of love, moving out of these conversations around family that are these more heavy topics.
Yeah,
Let's have some fun. Like I am now realizing that it's challenging for me to be in like traditional African American entertainment environments,
I
right?
feel
I prefer Blackness from a more broad perspective.
you're in a diaspora space. It's kind of hard. I don't even think you'll be able to do too much exclusively Jamaican spaces for too long at this point. Like,
I mean, certain things, but
but to us, like we're thinking like sonically, right? Like you can go
yeah, if we talk about music, yeah,
but like just being there all the time. Like if you were to, from a business standpoint, like if you had to work purely in that context and live purely like out in Linstead, I don't see you being able to do that for 6 months straight.
I could do 6 months, couldn't do 12.
Okay.
Definitely couldn't do 12. But and I mean, I say it now, like my goal in retirement, so to speak, is to make America my summer house. Be here for 3 months out of the year, do what I need to do, walk these dogs, meet these people, spend most of my time in a cultural environment that provides more of the familial setting that I'm looking to build. The challenge with that is community. Because I'm also very heavily tethered to this belief that for me, family, my immediate family, me, my partner, children, if we don't have community around us, like this whole thing is going to become much, much more volatile and hard to do. One part of that is, I'm jaded because I experienced that in my marriage, and it was challenging being like just us without having that rich resource around both of us.
Yeah.
So now I pay attention to it a lot more. And my friendships, for the most part, I don't really have a lot of single guy friends. Most of my mans are married or with children or about to have children type deal. So it's like, well, damn, what does this look like when I try to create a community when it's so spread out?
And the reality of the situation is, even if you did have all the ingredients, it would still take years to cultivate that. Because all of those relationships were built off of organic things that happen. And then you look up, it's like, oh, dang, like,
yeah,
I've been kicking it with you for like 5 years now. Okay.
And it's a huge component of like how I see entertainment now. Like I am so much more apt to like light up a fire pit, hit a JBL speaker, pull on some tunes, light something up, make some food with a bunch of people, and that be literally every Saturday night for me. That's my club. That's my outlet. And it's different now. That entertainment piece, I think, from an alt Black perspective, also has allowed a lot of us to explore more of what do we enjoy doing. Like you go to the club in America, or you go to a concert here, and you experience, maybe 20, 30, 40,000 people. You go to a concert overseas, and it's still like a black artist, you might see 100,000 people.
And even if it's a concert for one person, it still feels like a weekend long street festival because that's just how.
Yo,
Well, partially, it's going to take you like 50 minutes to get a chicken sandwich, but so long as you were willing to fully submit to that experience, then it turns
yeah,
into an adventure because in the process of waiting that 50 minutes for your sandwich, you end up starting up a conversation with these 5 people next to you. Then you come to
boom.
find out, oh shit, like you do the same thing that I do, and your summer home involves you being right down the street from me, even
That's
though you
right.
spent most of your year in like Tanzania.
Yeah. And to realize that this like music festival culture that in America has traditionally been white. You think of Woodstock, Ozfest, like these huge musical scenes that we wasn't really a part of. And then you see the rise of like Made in America, Something in the
Afro,
Water, South by Southwest, Coachella. They
yeah,
become these big black musical spaces where the world over, that shit's been happening for a
forever.
long time.
Yeah, man. So wow, it's funny that you mentioned that, and that's damn it, Afro Nation. All right, I'm gonna let it go. Eventually, I'll get over it. Ninio's performing. That's just breaking my heart. Like what? Anyways,
But wait. Give the people what that is, because everybody don't know
all right,
Afro
so
Nation.
Afro
Everybody don't
Nation
know Nino.
is it is a diaspora focused music festival, and they go to different places all over the world that have specific significance within the culture, right? So you'll have number one, it's the largest um, Afro music based music festival on the planet, right?
Hmm.
And they'll hit places in Latin America and Caribbean, they'll hit the continent. And this year, because last year, thanks to COVID, they canceled their Portugal set. And
Yep.
so this year we get two. One just happened in Puerto Rico in March. The next one that's happening this year is in right outside of Lisbon at this awesome beach park in a place called Algarve. And
Ooh.
yeah, bro, like the lineup is stupid, like stupid, ridiculous. Like from Chris Brown to like some of the best Amapiano, like South African house DJs to date. And they're
Yeah.
all gonna be on the same stage over the course of like 2 to 3 days. And also Portugal is just awesome. So yeah, that's happening. And
That's it.
because of the way that my life is changing right now, that's just not feasible for me this year. So I'm just gonna live vicariously through somebody. So I'm like trying to get people to go, so I can at least like watch their stories and
Or
feel like
somebody give you a nice little WhatsApp call while they're there.
bro, just WhatsApp me while Ninio's performing on the stage, and everything will be okay.
Just so I can see it. And
Just so I can see it and pretend I'm there.
Yeah, man. But I will say that I appreciate how the space of embracing things that feel good sonically
Yeah,
just allows you to be in so many different environments where you find like-minded people on various topics. And I think that is like if our parents' generation being so work-minded and that giving us the opportunity to be more free thinking is the foundation of what's alt black. The
yeah,
current setting, like the current state of alt blackness, is intersectionality, right? It's about all of the different components of what makes me me and what makes you you that we can now find to connect on, other than the fact that like our skin complexions are similar,
right.
right?
Or we've endured similar forms of the same oppression because all of those
That's
are
right.
traumas, right?
You're right.
And so now it's moving. And also, like for the sake of nuance, music festivals that are black focused aren't necessarily new here because there was a
Mhm.
Summer of Soul back in the 70s. Shouts out to
That's
Big Love
right.
for making it
That's
all.
true. Yeah.
But that being said, it was still unique in many aspects, right?
Yeah. It was the first of its kind. And that's, I think, why the Summer of Soul documentary hit so hard,
Yeah, people
because
didn't realize we did that.
they had no idea we were doing that for years in a time period. But to your point, like it wasn't something that was going super nationwide. Black folks around the
The
country didn't
infrastructure
know that
wasn't
this thing
there.
was
We didn't have
happening.
to.
Yeah,
Like you didn't
absolutely.
have the conditions. I think for us, it's that natural progression of now we've gone from fighting to get options, right, to now we have the options. What do we want to do with them?
What do
Which
you
now
want to do with
is
them?
next step. Well, who are you, and who do you wish to be? Because that's going to dictate the decisions that you make, and that dictates what you do with the options. And now just having like the resources to go and explore, and along with that, make some messes. So, like, I'm sure we're gonna get to a point where you have a Black-owned Fire Fest.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's what I'm saying, and that's gonna be indicative of the process. If you're big enough to make a mistake that costs hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions of dollars, and still have the opportunity to do something else after it, that's pretty indicative of the fact that you maybe have arrived, because that's part of what winning feels like, right?
So that absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't even be surprised from the perspective of another area of alt blackness we identified. If you look at something like Burning Man, right, and the whole black burner thing that has emerged and come out of like all of these black people who have been going to Burning Man. And if you don't know what Burning
I was
Man
about to
is,
say, break that one down.
but Burning Man is a annual occurrence that happens in these just completely isolated
Out in the middle
areas
of the desert.
in the middle of
out
nowhere,
Yeah.
where over the course of a couple days, a large group of people come together and they build a society, so to speak. They build a community. They just
Their own
build
currency, barter systems, and also yes,
everything.
music happens.
All
But
types of things happen. And then at the end, it all gets burned down. And so this was something that evolved and emerged out of, quite frankly, a lot of white people. But black people started to attend more and more. And as they did start to attend, they started to obviously understand that, like, yeah, this space for us here needs to feel and look different than what it does for y'all. And that's okay. And so emerged the black burner population in Burning Man. I wouldn't be surprised to see one day like just a black Burning Man, like just straight up a culturally significant one that's like, well, we're going to do this way. Nowadays, I would say that. But at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised if it never happens, because the whole construct of it is to bring as many different types of people together for this thing to move and to work. So I wouldn't be surprised if next.
Like the goal is to resist a lot of conveniences.
Yeah.
And to really, like, it's a experimentation and off grid. I think a lot of us haven't had enough time in the abundance of resources space yet to appreciate leaving it behind.
Yeah.
You know, many of us are still like, either we're not that far removed from, or we're the one who turned the tide for the entire bloodline. To like, we have a shit now. So it's like, I didn't do all that work to go hang out outside in the desert with no indoor plumbing and ride around on the beach cruiser, and you know what I'm saying, and the leather corset.
It's
right?
still there.
Wearing glasses that look like this, right?
You know what I'm saying?
So,
no, man, but I see it. Shout out to Burning Man. Shout out to all the black burners. Like, it is something that I cannot wait to experience. I cannot wait to experience.
Super dope.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
about to say, with all that said, we coming up on it. And so my follow up to the crowd is like, I defy everyone viewing this to stretch their understanding of what alternative looks like for them. So in addition to like, all right, show your version of alt black, that's step one. Show what you identify alt black to be today. And then do a little deep dive. Just, you know, let the rabbit hole of Google and YouTube and Reddit take you different places, and then find an alternative to that alternative.
Let it use you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Quick recap on the resources from today's episode. We have talked about alt black in several different dynamics. We've talked about it from a love perspective. And so if you want more information on what it means to experience love and intimacy from an alternatively black perspective, I would invite you to look at all types of cultural traditions that exist outside of America that Black people are involved in. Look at how they raise their families. Look at how they view partnership. Look at how they view dating, right? What does dating look like in
Or
Kenya?
is dating a thing that is looked at? That's a major factor.
I was gonna leave that alone and let them find it, but you giving them the breadcrumbs.
I'm giving them a breadcrumb. It's up to you, but yeah, you know.
We talked about alt-Blackness from a perspective of business, right? Money, finances, wealth, repatriation via global commerce, right? Like, what are we now looking at as we achieve or get closer to this quote unquote American dream? Now what? And then we got into a little bit of the aesthetics and the philosophies. And so, like, looking at Afro Nation, the entertainment side of things, looking at the Black burner population within Burning Man. And one we didn't get to touch on, but it is critically important, and I want JD to touch on it real quick: Afrofuturism.
All right, so being like a fan of the teachings of Sun Ra. This is a OG cat, born in Alabama, moved to New York back in like the 60s and 70s. And he was really the first one to discuss like Black identity from the perspective of interspace travel and challenging the norms of like the time and space continuum, right? And you can find that in the way that he composes melodies. That's getting deep into the weeds. To land the plane on it, Afrofuturism is the concept that the pieces that constitute our past are the bricks that like pave the path that allow us to progress into the future, because what we did as ancients was stuff that we brought with us from the cosmos, right? And so it is inherently timeless, which by default makes it futuristic. Like what is current right now is like but a brief interruption. But it is, you know, if we follow the breadcrumbs, which based on how our traditions work, well, are left in sound and song and drum pattern, then, you know, you can tap back into it.
Ta-da. Ladies and gentlemen, Afrofuturism in a nutshell.
That part.
And on that note, we're going to close out as we always do with our gratitude, attitude, and latitude. Coming first with gratitude. Shout out to all the alt-Black folks out there who are making this world more dynamic and more complete. We appreciate you. We see you. We honor you in this time. We're going to do this one on the fly. So from an attitude perspective, JD, what attitude would you like folks to walk away with from today's episode?
The attitude is there are no limits.
And
there are no rules.
Latitude perspective, we're going to take it back to the great South Side of Chicago philosopher, Kanye West. They say your attitude determines your latitude. So be high as a motherfucker, fly as a motherfucker.
Sounds like it's time for me to light something up. That's amazing.
Ooh, look, we got more episodes coming for y'all this season. Stay tuned. This is the first of many. Divine Masculine Activated Season 3, the alt-Black edition. Every episode we are going to be looking at different examples, environments, realities around alt-Blackness. And we love.
Yes.
Yo, the cool people we got coming on this season is going to be off the hook. But we love y'all to be involved with us and engaged. And so again, hit us up on IG, Divine Masculine Activated. Hit that click in the YouTube to follow us and stay connected. And we'll see y'all outside being all black as hell.
That part.
Peace.
Later on.
Much love to you.